Z Meloni odbyliśmy doskonałą i bardzo dogłębną dyskusję na temat wszystkich aspektów sytuacji dyplomatycznej. Tak powiedział prezydent Ukrainy Wołodymyr Zełenski na zakończenie spotkania w Palazzo Chigi. Zełenski, którego dziennikarze przechwycili przed przybyciem do siedziby rządu, powiedział, że ufa Meloni i jest zawsze gotowy do wyborów w odpowiedzi na krytykę Donalda Trumpa, który wezwał do przywrócenia wyborów w Ukrainie. Po odegraniu hymnów Meloni i Zełenski rozmawiali przez prawie 1,5 godziny. Premier została poinformowana o pracy kijowskiego zespołu negocjacyjnego, a ukraiński prezydent po raz kolejny określił wsparcie Włoch jako ważne. Rano Zełenski został powitany przez papieża Leona XIV. W Castel Gandolfo papież powtórzył potrzebę kontynuowania dialogu, podczas gdy prezydent Ukrainy poinformował go o pracy dyplomatycznej ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi i wysiłkach niezbędnych do zwrotu dzieci porwanych przez Rosję. Włoski etap podróży następuje po wizytach w Brukseli, gdzie Zełenski spotkał się z przywódcami Unii Europejskiej i sekretarzem generalnym NATO Markiem Rutte oraz w Londynie, gdzie Starmer, Merz i Macron powitali ukraińskiego przywódcę w poniedziałek.
European countries agreed on draft legislation on Monday that would introduce return hubs for migrants in a drive to speed up deportations. Under the proposal, member states could return asylum seekers to unrelated third countries outside the EU through bilateral agreements. The hubs can be a place of transit, a step before the individual is returned to their own country of origin, or become a permanent location for those with no right to stay in the EU, provided they can ask for asylum in that country.
We now have the legal framework so that the member states can make reception centers and other that sort of solutions with third countries. That is extremely important in order for us to change the fundamental disabilities of the current asylum system, the ways we've been talking about for many years that it's malfunctioning and that we help the wrong people and we don't help the people actually in need, and we can't control migration to Europe. That is an important step forward that we just have taken.
Countries also agreed on the so-called Migration Solidarity Pool for 2006. The EU's Asylum and Migration Management Regulation recommends that at least 30,000 people need to be relocated across the EU from countries under migratory pressure. But the bloc's Home Affairs ministers considered the needs to consist of just 21,000. 4 countries, Czechia, Croatia, Austria and Poland, were granted a total exemption from contributions to relocations and financial contributions to the Solidarity on Migration. Civil society organizations have criticized the introduction of return hubs as an inhumane practice that will increase abuses and overall human rights violations toward.
France's social security budget cleared a key hurdle in Parliament on Tuesday as MPs narrowly approved a draft bill aimed at staving off a huge gap in funding for welfare, pensions and health care. A total of 247 MPs voted in favor of the text and 234 voted against, while 93 abstained. The vote by lawmakers in the lower house handed a victory to embattled Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. Lecornu was saved by making last-minute concessions that included suspending President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform to secure the votes of the centre-left Socialist Party, alienating the Conservative Republican Party and his own centrist alliance. The government had warned MPs that if the social security budget for next year were to be rejected, public finances could quickly deteriorate. France, the Eurozone's second-largest economy, is under pressure to cut its budget deficit, but efforts have been armstrong by a fragmented parliament, the result of snap elections President Macron called last year.
The European Union is not immune to the erosion of fundamental rights. The chilling warning came as the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Türk, delivered an address to mark International Human Rights Day, observed annually on 10 December.
They say that about half of EU member states have seen a reduction in civic space, and civic space is what makes us thrive, because we need an open and free civic space. We need to be able to express our opinions. We need to be able to protest if we think we can protest. We need to be able to associate. And I have seen a lot of tendencies, even political discussions around it, that want to restrict civic space on environmental issues, on climate issues, on migration issues, for example.
The UN Human Rights Chief called on the EU to defend its digital regulations, expressing concern about possible challenges of Digital Market Act and Digital Services Act that lie ahead.
Now there are some tendencies and some discussions to say maybe we should lower the standards. I hope that's not going in that direction, because Europe is really a lead example when it comes precisely to the digital space. Europe is also a lead example on regulating business and human rights. But we again see a discussion today about this omnibus process, which may want to lower it.
This year, the theme of Human Rights Day is Our Everyday Essentials. The aim is to highlight how this issue shapes our daily lives, sometimes in subtle ways.
The European Commission launched a probe into Google over its use of online content to power its AI services. The investigation will examine whether Google used web publishers' content to provide generative AI services on its search result pages without appropriate compensation and without giving them the option to refuse. It will also assess whether videos uploaded on YouTube were used to train Google's generative AI models. According to the tech giant, the complaint could hinder innovation in a market that is more competitive than ever. The decision comes days after the EU imposed a fine on Elon Musk's social network X for breaching its landmark Digital Services Act, further escalating transatlantic tensions. Since Trump returned to office in 2025, the EU and the US have been clashing over the bloc's enforcement of digital rules. Trump's administration accuses the EU of solely targeting US companies. However, the bloc says its legislation is non-discriminatory.
Greek firefighters traded their uniforms for festive red hats, bringing Christmas spirit to the Children's Hospital Hagia Sophia in Athens, Greece. One firefighter, dressed as Santa Claus, was lowered from a crane, gliding down the building to deliver gifts to young cancer patients who are spending the holidays in care. Parents and children watched from balconies and windows as the fire crews scaled the hospital's exterior, turning the facade into an unexpected stage of light, movement and cheer.
Κάθε χρόνο το πυροσβεστικό σώμα έρχεται σε εμάς, δίνει δώρα στα παιδιά με ένα πρωτότυπο τρόπο. Εμείς αντλούμε δύναμη από τα παιδιά, γιατί τα παιδιά είναι οι μαχητές της ζωής, οπότε παίρνουμε παράδειγμα τα παιδιά και είναι το ελάχιστο που μπορούμε να κάνουμε.
As Santa descended floor by floor, firefighters on the ground handed out presents, ringing bells and waving to the children watching from the balconies.
Αποτελεί για εμάς ιδιαίτερη συγκίνηση και χαρά που μπορούμε με αυτόν τον τρόπο να δώσουμε χαρά στα παιδιά.
The visit is part of an annual initiative by the Hellenic Fire Service, which organizes similar actions in children's hospitals across Athens during the holiday season.
A team of paleontologists has discovered and carefully documented 16,600 footprints left by theropods, the dinosaur group that includes the Tyrannosaurus rex. For 6 years, researchers explored 9 different sites in central Bolivia.
Es el hallazgo más importante del mundo que se puede observar. 1,700 rastros de huellas se encontraron y más de 16,000 huellas simplemente en esta zona. Si hablamos más del parque, de todo el parque nacional, podremos encontrar miles más y miles y más.
The footprints could be 60 million years old and come from entire herds of dinosaurs. The dinosaurs that ruled the earth and roamed this region also made awkward attempts to swim here, according to the study, scratching at what was squishy lake bottom sediments to leave another 1,378 traces. According to the scientists, the dinosaurs pressed their claws into the mud just before water levels rose and sealed their tracks, protecting them from centuries of erosion.
O que está acontecendo aqui?
Senhora Teresa, dona da casa?
Aham.
É uma homenagem do governo.
Homenagem?
É, por conta da sua idade.
Mas desde quando uma pessoa é homenageada só porque ficou velha?
Abordagem de documentos.
Ainda falta 3
A
anos.
senhora precisa comparecer na prefeitura com urgência.
Eu vou ter que andar no catavélio.
Mas você não já sabia que tu ia pra colônia?
Eu não sabia que era agora. Tem coisa que eu ainda quero fazer.
Cadê aquela senhorinha que veio no beiro se lavar?
E a senhora? Tá indo fazer o que lá em Taquatioca?
Garantir meu lugar no céu.
Para que quer dinheiro?
Eu vou comprar liberdade antes de ser preso. Será que dá medo de voar lá em cima?
Quanto mais medo, melhor.
Você não tem medo da polícia, não?
Ninguém pode fazer nada comigo.
Deixe ninguém travar seu caminho, não.
Dizem que ele tem poder de encanto. Tu vai ver o que tu nunca viu.